Bryson DeChambeau is known as maybe the longest professional driver of the golf ball in the world. I was lucky enough to compete against him in the 2022 Long Drive World Championship, where he beat almost everybody but Martin Borgmeier, finishing second in the world. So how does he hit it as far as he does, while also being accurate enough to finish 20 under in a major, losing to Xander for the PGA Championship by just one stroke? Let's take a look. The first thing I notice is a very subtle move, but if you watch as he starts his swing, you're going to see a very subtle shift onto his right leg. This is him loading his back leg right here. Now, we can only derive as much energy from the ground as we drive from our backside into our front side. So if he never loaded his backside, he would have nothing to drive into his front leg with. And you'll see into impact how much energy and force he's generating from the ground, specifically from his front side. Now, that's about as far back as his right hip will move. And you'll see from here forward, he is only moving those hips towards the target. Pretty impressive move here. We'll go to arm parallel. The two things that stand out to me is one, again, his hips moving towards the target, already transferring his weight from his backside to his front side. But two, look at the width. Look how far away his hands are from his body. The golf swing, especially with the driver, is very much a wide takeaway to a narrow downswing. People get in trouble with when they go narrow to narrow or narrow to wide. The golf swing is much more efficient when you go wide to narrow. Mechanics aside, what it does is it allows you to use the shaft and load the shaft at the top and transition correctly. When you start wide and then collapse to narrow at the top, you set that shaft at the top correctly in terms of timing, and you'll see that shaft flex, and it maintains that flex, and some people call it lag, all the way down into impact. So look at the width here. You'll also see his head sinking into the ground as his hips and legs start transitioning to the front side. Now, as we get into transition into the front side, I notice two things. We'll get to what I call front foot strike, right when he gets all of his energy into his lead leg. Now, look at two things. One, how closed his shoulders are. A lot of amateurs will already have their shoulders much more open at this point. What that does is, one, it's poor timing and sequencing, so you're going to struggle with ball striking. But two, it gives your swing ample time. Now that he's engaged his front side into the ground, it gives you ample time to transfer that energy up from the ground through the front side, through your body, then into the club. If your shoulders were more open here, you would have already lost your shoulders out of sequence, so you would be mostly swinging with your arms. Bryson is in such a good position here to use the energy from his front leg, let it transfer up through his body, and then as his shoulders unwind, transfer into the club. The other thing you'll see here is his head is slightly behind his hips. So if you draw a line down his spine, that line would be leaning away from the target. This really helps with accuracy. If his head was farther towards the target, he would struggle coming over top of the ball or trying to save it, holding that face off, leading to a right miss. Now, as we go through the swing, you'll notice his head becomes perfectly still. Again, like I spoke about in the transition at the top, that head staying behind the golf ball really helps him keep that club face square to target throughout the entire swing. And going back to what we talked about at the top, is that lead leg is now becoming more of a stiff front side. That's with the energy coming up through his body and now getting into the club. If that lead leg was soft, his head would drift forward, he would lose power, and again, lose accuracy as well. Now here he is into impact, left leg still straightening, head moving away from the target almost, acting as kind of a whip effect with his club head being the end of that whip right at the golf ball. Very stable. The back of the palm for him, you can see facing the target. That helps keep that club face stable, aiming at the target all the way through the swing.